Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening. We are reading from the complete works of Swami Ramakrishnananda, who was one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, who spent many of his last years in the south building up those monasteries. And we are on his little chapter called The Triple Quest. It's in volume 3 on page 448 if you happen to have the particular edition. I think it's also part of the for Thinkers on Education, as I remember. Let's see if I can double check that.
I think you're right.
Yeah, they don't make this easy. All right, well, why don't you go ahead and read.
The Triple Quest. Bhagavan Sri Krishna, in describing the real man, says that the real man is self-existent, uncreated by anyone, beginningless, endless, indestructible in every way, and infinite. He has no hunger, no desire, is all perfect, and being infinite, he is all-knowing. That is the real man. But the real man is forgotten. And in his place comes the false apparent man who believes himself to be weak, to be helpless, who's hungry and thirsty, having birth and death, and whose existence is very precarious. His idea is that he was born with this body and will die with this body. And this mistake is the cause of all our miseries, and our greatest effort should be to put down this blunder, which has robbed us of our omnipotence and omniscience. The only way to get rid of it is to renounce all these mistakes, which we call Maya, and be who thus renounces is a sannyasin. Whoever struggles with whole-souled determination to get rid of this mistake is a sannyasin.
I think your Kindle said be instead of he. Mm-hmm. Maya and he who has thus renounces.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's, well, sometimes the scan doesn't come out right. So, years ago we had a devotee who came to virtually every class, every night, for decades. And her brother was dying at one point, and so she came to the Friday night class, and she says, my brother seemed so distressed. He kept crying out, "I'm not going to die, I'm not going to die." And I said, well, when you get close to death, perhaps he has realized his true nature and knows that he's not this body that's going to die. And she was quite relieved at that thought. So that's certainly what this paragraph is telling us, that if we realize who we really are, this beginningless, endless, indestructible self, that death doesn't have a sting to it. It's not a reality. It's the death of the body. It's not the death of us. All right.
Everyone is really a sannyasin, for everyone is constantly giving up in order to get happiness. There's not one who does not want to live and to be happy. Even the little ant is doing just what the greatest yogi in a mountain cave is doing. What is it doing when it goes from one place to another? Is it not renouncing this place to go to that one? It comes to a grain of sand, stops, examines it, and finds that is not what it wants. Gives it up, goes in search of something better. So it moves on and on until it comes to a grain of sugar. And then its journey ends for the time being until hunger once more asserts itself. Thus it renounces one thing after another for something else. And how long would this little creature have to search? When will final rest come for it? When will it be able to reach an infinite amount of sugar? That no matter how often hunger may arise, it will always find satisfaction, and perfect happiness will be realized. That is only when it comes in contact with an infinite amount of bliss will its journey stop. That infinite amount of bliss is God. The yogi is searching after the same thing.
It's true, we all have to continually give things up. You can't get attached to your first grade teacher because you have to go on to your second grade teacher and so forth. So we may enjoy a particular teacher at a particular grade level, but we have to realize that we have to move on. And it's a better thing. You don't want to repeat first grade forever. You want to keep going. Similarly, if you had to move, sometimes people get very attached to a home, but for various reasons they feel they have to move. But having a new home is a new adventure, and it forces us to go through all the stuff we've accumulated, and a good chance to weed out all the stuff you haven't used in the last 3 or 4 years that's just cluttering up things. Things that just sit around, use up useful space, and become a nuisance, really. But it's people have attachments, or they just don't get around to cleaning them up, and so then it becomes a clutter rather than useful things. So we have to keep giving all these things up. But of course, the main point of this paragraph is that eventually we give up all these worldly things for the real pleasures of the eternal happiness of knowing that we are one with God. All right, let's try the next paragraph.
When a man is young, he thinks that by worshiping his wife or his child, by seeking sense pleasures or money or knowledge, he will be happy. But this life is not very palatable. It cannot satisfy his hunger long after a time. After a time, he wants to go beyond this life, beyond body, senses, and mind. The body has in it all sorts of desires that is stored up from past experiences. When he goes back of the body to the mind, he finds it also little satisfaction and always restless indeed. If we analyze this mind, we shall find it just like the little ant, searching here and there and never at rest. The mind, too, is full of desires. And when the man discovers that these desires for sensual pleasures are the cause of all his miseries, he begins to doubt the validity of those pleasures. Then he says, as long as I believe that beautiful pictures, sweet sounds, name and fame can make me happy, then I shall have to cling to this body. As long as I entertain the idea that these sense enjoyments can give me happiness, I shall have to be a slave to this body. I shall have to be born with it and die with it.
Yeah, we do get attached to certain things and go through certain phases, As you grow up, you have various toys that you enjoy. And then after you get older, you realize that those toys are just for little kids, and you've grown up and you go on to other toys. Now people get addicted to social media, and rather than forming relationships with people around them, they want to know how many people they can get on Facebook or Twitter or some other platform, and they feel like they're getting somewhere if they have 1,000 followers or something, or 1,000 friends, and you get all these requests from people you don't know at all, and they want to be your friend. Well, I don't know why they want to be your friend, but anyway, they just want to collect friends, and makes them feel good. But of course, now we're realizing that this is having a lot of social consequences, that people really aren't very happy. They're feeling more and more alone. Doesn't matter how many thousands of friends or how many likes or how many subscribers they have, that they've missed out on something. And of course, again, the real happiness comes when you move from the body pleasures through the mind pleasures on to the spiritual pleasures, and realize that the real happiness is in the life of the spirit, not in the life of the body or the mind, or even electronic media. Certainly not there either. All right.
Is there no other happiness besides this that comes through the channel of the senses? Can that happiness not be found anywhere else? Why am I happy? A beautiful garland makes me happy, or a fine dish. But does the happiness come out of the garland or out of the dish? If I have a marble statue and give it a garland or a good dish, will it be happy? No. There must be someone in the statue to enjoy the flowers or the dish. So there must be someone in the body to enjoy the garland or the food. If I'm sleeping, someone comes, sings my favorite tune, it does not give me pleasure because I am not in the ears, and hence do not hear it. So I must be there to enjoy. I must feel that I am happy, that I enjoy.
Of course, all this boils down, of course, as the Upanishad says, one doesn't love the spouse for the sake of the spouse, but for sake of the Atman within the spouse. And same thing with the love for the children and love for the friends. All of these things, the love for any person is really the love of the Atman in that person, and not for the person himself. And now, of course, he's going into a different level here, where pleasure is in the mind enjoying things. So if you enjoy things through the ears or through the eyes, it becomes a sensual pleasure, even if it's a mental pleasure, like enjoying the reading of a good book or the hearing of beautiful music. So we find that the enjoyment is in the way things are presented to us through the senses. Let's continue with his analysis here.
If I put sugar on my tongue, it becomes dilated. A pleasant sensation comes, and I'm happy. If, on the contrary, I put quinine, the saliva recedes, the tongue becomes contracted, the nerves go back, and there's a tendency to throw it out. I feel unhappy. I must have to conclude from this that sugar is friendly to the tongue, but quinine unfriendly. When a friend comes, you open your heart, show everything you have, and make him a part of you. When an enemy comes, what do? You shut up everything. You keep wondering, oh, when will this fellow go? Now, when can friendship take place? When two people are of equal age and are one and the same in tendencies and opinions. So that sugar is friendly to the tongue shows that the sweetness which is in sugar is reciprocated by the tongue, where there is also sweetness. If sugar is the cause of happiness, then the tongue too is also the cause of happiness. Because as soon as sugar comes, the tongue shows its own nature. And when quinine comes, it hides itself. So the nature of the tongue is not bitterness, but sweetness. The sweetness, therefore, must belong to the self.
Interesting. Let's go on.
What is the tongue? It's merely an instrument belonging to someone behind the tongue. And that someone is the self. Enjoyment is indeed the very nature of the self. It is the very nature of man. Man is made up of enjoyment, just as quinine is made up of bitterness. And when he comes in contact with the same thing in nature, then he experiences joy. This shows that bliss is inside him, not outside. I do not open my heart to all sorts of people. Only when I find one of my own kind do I open it. Therefore, if it opens at the approach of sweetness or enjoyment, it is evident that such must be my nature.
Well, sometimes we can change our nature too. You can't necessarily change the nature. Well, you can, you know. Different people have different tastes. You have acquired tastes. You can, if you go to other countries and you taste the different foods and the different spices, if it's the first time you've experienced, sometimes it's a rather shock. You go to some place where they enjoy very, very hot chilies, and it's, oh my goodness, how does anybody eat this food? And the rest of the people who have grown up on it, they just eat it like it's an absolutely normal thing. So obviously there can be an acquired taste to these things. Also with people, you can train yourself to like more and more people. And remember that the Lord comes in various shapes and sizes. And if we don't react negatively, if we can try to train ourselves not to react negatively to the people that come into our lives, we will actually be happier. If we can, I can even see this in myself. You run into people and you have this kind of automatic reaction of, oh Lord, here's this person again. And it's irritating, but if you can get over that and just try to react as though this person is your friend, and remember that the Atman is in that person as well, you won't suffer as much. I've known people that can have knockdown, drag out arguments one day, and you come back the next day and it's like that never happened. they just greet you as though they've never had an argument with you. That's a good trait to have, to not hold on to those things. So we can train ourselves to have more happiness by not seeing people as enemies, and by realizing that the tongue and the ears and the eyes different people can learn to enjoy different things. Music's the same way. A lot of times it's the music we grow up with that we end up liking, but different people grow up with different music. Different countries have different music, different ages have different music, or different families. And so they end up enjoying different kinds of music. So if you can realize that, and you're in a situation where you're not the one that's choosing the music, you can just try to enjoy it anyway, even though it's not what you grew up with. It's not always that easy, but you can do the best you can. And if you keep thinking, oh, this is horrible, then you're just making yourself miserable. So you have to try not to bring up those negative reactions, and just think of, you'd be rather listening to something else. Anyway, let's go on with what he's saying here.
Man also finds out another thing. He says, yes, bliss is in me, but am I the body? Or am I only a dweller in the body? Then when he analyzes, he discovers that the body is merely a dwelling house in which he is living for a time, but that he is eternal by his own nature. He wanted to get rid of death. Now he learns that death has no more power to approach him, any more than darkness has the power to approach the sun. So he realizes his immortality. But no loka can immortality be realized. In all lokas, there's no safety from death. Then where to go? Now the difficulty is solved. I must go inside to the self to be safe from death. I've also found that all bliss is inside myself, and that my very nature is bliss.
Yes, so if you realize your nature is bliss, then we can look at examples like Swami Vivekananda, where they were happy in all sorts of circumstances. Didn't matter whether they were, whether he didn't have a home and was living in a boxcar, or sleeping on a bench, or under a tree, or whether he was with very wealthy people in New York or in Los Angeles, or very modest people of very modest means. Didn't matter to him because he knew his true nature, that bliss was inside and not outside. And so if he had a small crowd or if he had a huge crowd, didn't matter to him. The bliss was inside. So we can realize that we want to train ourselves to try to be more like that. And even if it's, we have to pretend, a lot of times today's imagination is tomorrow's realization. So we have to try to at least pretend that we can enjoy all these things and be at peace and bliss with ourselves in any particular circumstance. Of course, there are incidences where people have been imprisoned and they have to go within, and then they realize that they can find a certain amount of peace and bliss even inside of prisons. All right, let's go on.
These two ideas, therefore, have been realized. I have bliss, and I shall live forever. But there is a third thing I wish, knowledge.
So this is our triple quest, you see. Here we go. Bliss, I'll live forever, and here's the third wish, knowledge, okay?
Now the mind is full of desires, for a desireless mind is no mind. But I am blissful and eternal, so I cannot have desires. And as mind is limited, I cannot be mind. I must be something beyond both body and mind, for I am not born, so I must be limitless. Mind knows many things. There are many more that it does not know. Therefore, it can never get beyond the finite. Now, whatever remains in the range of my consciousness must be known to me, just as whatever is within the range of the light of the lamp must be illumined by it. And as I am infinite, I must have infinite consciousness. So I must be all-knowing. Infinite knowledge is mine.
So you get all of this in one package. It's not like you have to go after all three, but once you realize the self within, you get that knowledge that you are beyond death, that you are the source of infinite bliss, and that you are the source of infinite knowledge. And again, not necessarily that you know everything in the physical sense with your physical current mind, but your true mind, the infinite self, does know everything. And that's why these great ones that have done that can read people like a book. They can read their past lives and so forth. And they understand what's happening in the world from a deep level. They didn't have to go through a lot of history classes to do it. All right, let's go on.
Thus we shall see that the three ideals which not only angels and man, but also the lowest worm is seeking, can only be realized by going inside myself. How to go there? You need no money. You need not need to buy a ticket. Then why can I not go to myself at once? You may think that you can. When you try, you find three almost impassable barriers. First, the world. Second, the body. And third, the mind. Can you go away from the world? Can you leave your family and friends? First, there's your wife and your children. When you want to go, the sight of their weeping faces will prevent you. Arjuna said, "Why do I need to fight? Why must I kill my relatives and friends? If I'm all blissful, why can I not go off and just be happy in myself?" He thought that Sri Krishna was self-contradictory in asking him to kill his own guru, his own grandfather. If you think Jnanamarga is the best, then why do you engage me in a dreadful action, he asked. Sri Krishna replied, Arjuna, What you think so very easy is not so easy. And later Arjuna had to admit, yes, Krishna, it is true. To conquer the mind is almost impossible.
Now, of course, we have to, again, do the best we can little by little. And sometimes the best attitude is to remember that this world is, well, there are a couple of analogies. You could think of it as a gymnasium where you're working things out and working through karmas. Another is that you're in a great drama, the drama written by the Divine Mother, and you're playing a part. And so you play the part the best you can, but it's not the real you. It's just a part that's been assigned to you, but your real self is the Atman. And this is just a temporary role and a temporary circumstance. And you've been through many circumstances in the past, and here you are again. And so you need not worry about the circumstances you're in at the moment. Simply do the best you can in them and not get attached to them, because they're not going to last forever, just like all the others didn't last forever. So if we can take that attitude that we're just in a particular play, then we're much better off. And certainly if you've ever been in plays, you know that. This season you're in this particular play, written by this particular playwright, and you're working with a certain cast. And then the season closes, and the next season it's a different play, and you got a different part. Maybe you were the comic character in the last one. Now maybe you're the one that dies in agony or falls passionately in love with somebody. And then when that season's over, you get another part, and maybe you're the wise, all-knowing father figure or something. So if we can take that attitude and realizing that this play this season will also come to an end, just like a play comes to an end. Nothing runs forever, although a few things like the Phantom of the Opera seem to go on forever, but most plays do end, and then we just go on. And if you're in a repertoire company, you have to be willing to go on to the next role. Okay, let's see what he says.
But if you cannot conquer the mind, you cannot go back to yourself. Who is the greatest conqueror? He who has conquered the whole world, or he who has conquered his own mind? So Krishna goes on to say, since it is so difficult to subdue the mind, it is better to work. Work is rather easier. Therefore, he preached karma yoga to him. But every work implies limitation, for who works? He who is in want. The rich man does not work because he has everything. Work is based on the idea of want. So, Arjuna says, the very idea of work is bad, and yet you ask me to work? Yes, Sri Krishna explains. Work is bad if it is based on want. But there's another kind of work which is called karma yoga. Do not work because you want anything, but work because you have hands to work, because all your organs were made to work. Therefore, work without thought of the results. You can command your legs, your hands, your mind to do whatever you like, but you cannot command the results. Outside this body, you can command your wife, your children, your own household. You may, to a certain extent, command this microcosm, but you can never command the macrocosm.
Yeah, so of course he's talking about karma yoga. You work with detachment, but with concentration. The concentration is likened unto a Raja Yoga type aspect of karma yoga, where you're concentrating the mind on the work at the time. So it's good training for the mind. And you can devote, of course, the work to the Lord and make it a devotional practice as well as karma yoga. And so, or you can take a jnani approach and realize that this is just the drama of the Divine Mother. And so you can take all these attitudes doing karma yoga. Okay.
You're finite, so you have finite mind. But he is infinite, and his cosmic mind is infinite. His conclusions, therefore, are not the same as your conclusions, and that is the reason why you are always at loggerheads with God. That is the reason why you're always fighting against God. You weep and complain that things do not go your way. Everyone does it. When you thus fight, it goes by the name of ego in this country and by the name of Satan in the West. When all fighting against God ceases and the will becomes one with his will, then we have alwars and saints.
That's the trick, is to realize, well, just you have to pray that your will is united with the divine will, that your actions are united with the divine action, that you are an instrument of the Lord, and that he is doing through you what he wants to do, or she, if you want to look at it as the Divine Mother is working through you, that Shakti energy, and you pray to be in alignment with that energy of the cosmos. So that's interesting that he equates the ego and Satan. Yeah. So in other words, if you in the West, if you find yourself doing something against God's will, then you blame the devil for tempting you into doing things that you're not supposed to be doing. But this goes a little beyond that. It's the ego. The ego is thinking it knows best. And yet we know that God knows best. And so we do the best we can. And if we thought things were going to go one way and they go some other way, then we have to think, well, that's the way I guess God wanted it, even though I didn't understand that at the beginning. So we have to try to keep our attitude aligned with God's will. Not so easy, but again, you try, and today's imagination is tomorrow's realization. Okay?
When the ego fights, God must go. When God fights, the ego must go. So go on working and leave the results to God. If the result is not palatable, do not get dissatisfied, for your tendencies are perverse. God's results are always good to every creature in the world. Therefore, go on working. Leave the results to God. If you work in this way, the ego will have to give way, and you will become the most blissful of men. Learning.
You know, there's a Tizé song, all the way to heaven is heaven, all the way to God we are with him. If we go out, he comes in. So that's just a way of saying the ego. If you can get the ego out of the way, then God will come in. I think that's from a saying of St. Teresa of Avila. So you see, they have the same ideas, they just couch it in different words. But so if we can get ourselves out of the way, that ego, then we become more united with that bliss of the Atman, the bliss of God. All right?
Learning the karma yoga from me, Vajrata taught it to Manu. Manu imparted it to his son. Gradually, all the royal sages knew it one after another, but it was forgotten for long ages, and now I'm reviving it. Today, I'm revealing it to you because you are my beloved and love me very dearly. Am I partial? Sri Krishna asks. No, comes the answer. I do not tell it to everyone, because very few people will believe it. Nearly all men in the world will say, I have to earn my own bread by the sweat of my brow. What time have I for other work? Where is your God? Is he in the temple? If you do not give food to your God for one day, you will die. Why shall I believe in such a God? You ask me to work without caring for the results? Well, who will get them? God? Is he a good man? Will he pay me properly? But you're not like that, Sri Krishna says to Arjuna. We're friends. That means that we have cognate natures. And you love me very much. You love none else but me. Whoever will be a devotee will hear this secret. But to get it, you will have to be an Arjuna. Arjuna was an incarnation of Nara. To learn this secret, you must be a true disciple. The moment you can raise yourself to the place of Arjuna, you will get Krishna as your friend. Why does not everyone get God as a teacher? Because all are not true disciples. You must have God as your friend and no one else. And to have Sri Krishna as your friend, you must be an Arjuna. Arjuna was a true disciple. Therefore the Lord says, I will give this secret to you because you will be able to be benefited by it.
Yeah, and of course that reminds us of Brother Lawrence, who had the Lord as his constant companion. He ended up with a job that he really didn't like, frankly. He had to do a lot of the kitchen work, a lot of cleaning of pots and pans and cutting up of vegetables and so forth. And it wasn't really what he would have liked to do, but because of physical injuries that he had and the lack of education and the particular needs for the monastery he was in, that was the kind of work he had. And so he learned to like it by making God his companion and having God working with him by his side all the time. So again, with that attitude, you can enjoy and spiritualize your work. I'm also reminded of what Abraham Lincoln said. He says, I eliminate my enemies by making them my friends. So again, if you want to not negatively react to people in your lives, you can try to make them your friends. And you have to do that with your work as well. So make your work your friend rather than your enemy, and learn to enjoy it by making God your constant companion in your work. All right.
People criticize because we keep knowledge secret, because we keep the Gayatri secret. And they say that the Upanishads and all knowledge should be thrown broadcast. This is a foolish idea. If we deliver a lecture in English to one who does not understand English, would it not be very foolish? Or if we show fine pictures to a blind man, would it not be altogether senseless? Today, every boy can repeat the Upanishads, but does any rishi or any sage come out of it? Swami Ramakrishna used to tell us that a parrot may learn the names of God, repeat them all day long, but when a cat comes, it forgets them all and utters its natural cry. Repeating verse by these people is just like the ignorant repetition of the parrot. To be a little conservative in communicating higher truths is therefore good.
Well, I think it's good that it's not hidden and it's not available, but we do have to realize that some people probably aren't quite ready for it, and that's why religions have different kinds of teachings for different kinds of people. So that they can benefit and take things one step at a time. They don't need to necessarily jump in at the highest level, just like in school. Just because calculus is a great subject in mathematics, we don't start there. You have to start with arithmetic and algebra and geometry and trigonometry and analytic geometry, and then you're ready to take calculus. And again, if you tried to teach calculus to somebody that hadn't any math at all, they wouldn't understand a word you were saying. Wouldn't make any sense. And maybe that's not their bailiwick. Maybe they're more artistic or musical or literary, and so you teach them those kinds of arts. And so religion is that way, and we have different kinds of yogas. We have our main 4 yogas with different aspects of those that we can teach to different people who are ready for different kinds of experiences depending on their past lives and so forth. So it's not like today things aren't kept a secret. There are books of Upanishads sitting on the shelf. Anyone can pick them up and read them. But if somebody picks it up and doesn't get anything out of it, that's okay. Well, they'll find another spiritual book where they can get something out of it and take that step. And even ourselves, we know that perhaps you read the Gospel of Ramakrishna 15 years ago and you liked it, but did you get everything out of it you could? No. You read it again today and you find it says other things to you that you missed completely the first time. And so even with the same book and the same person, we find that some of the teachings click, and sometimes we have to wait a while for other teachings to click. And again, that's okay. We're all works in progress, and we take things as they come. All right. We just have a little more time. Is this an infinite paragraph? No, I've got 2 pages here. Okay, we might be able to finish. Let's see.
I kind of lost my place.
Arjuna could not understand.
Okay. Yeah. Arjuna could not understand Sri Krishna. You are my contemporary, he said. Even Yudhishthira and Burma are elders. How then can you say that you taught this yoga to Virthast, who was born long before? How can I believe this? Well, my dear boy, Sri Krishna replied, many births have elapsed. Yourself and myself, I know them all. And you don't know them. Why? Because I'm God and you're a man. We look the same, that there is this difference. What is it to be a man? What is it to be God? God is the master of his body and mind, and man is not. Man is he who identifies himself with his body. Man is he whom body imprisons, whom mind imprisons. Is he who is the slave to this body, the slave to his mind. Is he whom mind and body overpower. In my babyhood, Sri Krishna continues, I was as much all-knowing as when I'm grown up. But you are a baby even when you're grown. Nothing can overpower my mind or my senses, whereas you were almost overpowered all the time. This knowledge is inside of you, is in me, but in me there is illumination, and you are in darkness. When illumination will come at once, you will know that you had many births.
You can go ahead and finish.
But can a man know his past lives? Yes, yogic philosophy tells that everyone can know them. All that you have to do is control your mind and senses. You must be self-helping. And what does self-helping mean? What sort of life must you live? You must not depend on anyone. You must not put on any clothes, because for that you must have to depend on a weaver. So you must betake yourself to the jungle and clothe yourself in the bark of trees and live on leaves. Then when this world is wiped out, other lives will rise up. Anyone can do this. The only thing necessary is that this world be darkened.
As this would be darkened. The only thing necessary is that this would be darkened. Not sure I followed that. Maybe we read that too fast.
No, this would be darkened.
Yeah. It looked like world, but it's wood. Well, we need to, as he says, we don't all remember our past lives, but if you can intellectually know that you've had many past lives, that goes a long way to helping us get over the attachment to this one and to understanding that what's happening in this one has probably depended on things that we've done or have had done to us in many past lives. And just as therapists find that things that happened to you in childhood or when you were many years younger are still affecting your behavior now, and recognizing those things will help us get over that and not being triggered. Similarly, we can take an understanding that, well, we might not know all the details, but something probably happened, or we did something in a past life that causes us to react in certain ways. And if it's a way we don't like, then that'll help us get over that. We can train our minds to realize that we can go beyond these automatic reactions and train ourselves to have better reactions. And eventually, if you can train the mind to concentrate and do Raja Yoga practices, you can begin to probe the depths of your mind. It's like calming the waves on a lake to the point where you can see not only see your reflection in the lake, but you can see all the way to the bottom of the lake. That's like being able to see down into your subconscious mind and knowing all the things that lurk down there as a witness. You're not just being reacted by them unconsciously, but you can see them consciously and see them as the witness. The witness mind is now seeing the depths of your own layers of your mind. So that's when we can begin to lessen the ego hold and the hold of the senses on our mind and become freer and freer and know more and more of our blissful self. And again, as he says, sometimes that's an instantaneous process where the light just clicks on and the illumination comes. Sometimes it's more gradual and we get little glimpses and become a little bit more detached and a little bit more less egoistic. And so we go gradually, and that sometimes is necessary in order to be prepared for the enlightenment. Sometimes if somebody gets some sort of enlightenment experience by force, maybe doing too many breathing exercises in the wrong way or something of that nature, it can be very deranging to the mind, where the mind gets off balance because it's simply not prepared for that experience. They've still been way too attached to the ego and to sense objects, and to suddenly have that experience where they weren't even looking for it can be very deranging. All right, well, that concludes that illuminating chapter, and next time we can begin with chapter 10, is a belief in transmigration consistent with reasoning. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. Can back up.
Mm-hmm.